So let's talk about the book of Genesis. You probably know it as the story of, well, how everything began. But today, we're going to look at it from a different angle, as the origin story of a single, powerful promise that winds its way through all of human history. And that brings us to a really central question. When you read these famous stories, the garden, the flood, that tower, is it just a depressing tale about how badly we messed things up? Or is there something else going on? Could it actually be a rescue story? And that right there is the big idea we're going to unpack. Genesis shows us this powerful pattern. We humans have a real knack for creating wreckage, but God has this incredible, unwavering plan to take that very same wreckage and turn it into something good.
Okay, so it all kicks off in a perfect garden, right? God creates people, gives them this amazing world, and there's just one rule, a single boundary that's all about trust.
But then, doubt creeps in. A serpent shows up and asks what might be the oldest, most destructive question in the world. Did God really say that? And boom, with just that little seed of doubt, trust is shattered, the rule is broken, and everything changes. But you've got to see this, because right in the middle of handing out the consequences for this mess, God makes this strange, cryptic promise. It's the very first whisper of a rescue plan. It's a little hint that this disaster won't be the end of the story. Now, that first failure, it doesn't just stay in the garden. It spirals. What started as one bad choice explodes into a full-blown global catastrophe, which sets the stage for God to step in a huge way with a totally new kind of promise. And what's wild is how fast things fall apart. It starts inside the very first family, with Cain murdering his brother Abel. And that one act of jealousy just kicks off this vicious cycle of violence that ends up infecting the entire world. It gets so unbelievably bad that the Bible gives us one of its most heartbreaking lines. God looks at the world he loves, and he's filled with regret. He is grieved to his core. The wreckage is now everywhere. So what does God do? And this is absolutely crucial. He doesn't just wipe the slate clean for good. He responds with something called a covenant. Now, this is not just a contract between two equal parties. A covenant is a binding, unbreakable oath, usually made by the stronger party to the weaker one. And getting this one idea is the key to everything that follows. So after the flood, God makes this formal covenant, and he puts a rainbow in the sky as the sign, as his personal guarantee. He's promising to preserve the world, no matter how bad it gets. He's creating a stable stage so his rescue plan can keep moving forward. Okay, so you see how this is building, right? God makes this huge, universal promise to preserve all of humanity. And then, the camera's focus narrows, like way down. It zooms in from all of humanity to just one single guy who has no idea what's coming. God calls this man Abraham and gives him a promise that is just staggering. He says, I'm going to make you a great nation, I'm going to bless you, and somehow through you and your descendants, every single family on earth is going to be blessed. And this is where the tension of the story just becomes so clear. Look at the vessel God chooses, an old man and a woman who can't have children. Now look at the promise, a whole nation and a blessing for the entire world. The gap between those two things is massive, which makes it obvious from the get-go that this whole plan depends on God's power, not on human ability. And we see this theme over and over. Take Abraham's grandson, Jacob. The guy's a deceiver, a schemer. He literally tricks his father and steals his brother's blessing. And yet, he's the one God chooses to carry the promise forward. This is a story about God's choice, not about people earning it. Now, this whole theme of wreckage and repurposing, it all comes together in a final, brilliant story at the end of Genesis. It's the story of one of Jacob's sons, a guy named Joseph. I mean, just look at the wreckage of this one life. He's betrayed by his own family, sold into slavery by his brothers because they were jealous. Then he's falsely accused of a crime he didn't commit, thrown into a dungeon, and just forgotten. This is human brokenness at its worst. But then, in this unbelievable twist, Joseph has this God-given gift for interpreting dreams. And that one gift takes him from the bottom of a pit, a forgotten prisoner, all the way up to being the prime minister of Egypt, the second most powerful man in the known world. And here it is, years later, when Joseph finally sees his brothers again, this is what he says to them. And this one line, you could say it's the thesis statement for the entire book of Genesis.
This is God pulling back the curtain and showing what he was doing behind the scenes the entire time. Joseph's life just lays it all out for us. His brothers meant to destroy him. That was their intention. They created wreckage. But God took their evil and repurposed it to save the very family that caused all the trouble in the first place. So you can see the progression, right? The promise starts as this faint whisper of rescue back in the garden. It grows into a promise to preserve the whole world after the flood. Then it narrows to one family through Abraham. And finally, in Joseph, we see that promise in action, saving that family from starvation. But the book doesn't end with a nice, tidy bow. It actually closes with Abraham's family safe, but they're in Egypt. They're not in the land God promised them. The story isn't over. Genesis is basically the giant setup for the rest of the Bible.
So that brings us all the way back to our first question. If the so-called heroes of Genesis are liars and schemers and murderers and are just deeply flawed, then what's the point of the story?
The point is, they aren't the heroes. The true main character of Genesis is a God who refuses to give up on his broken world, a God who pursues his people with these unwavering, unbreakable promises, and who specializes in turning human wreckage into divine rescue every single step of the way.